The only show bringing cops and the community together for some real talk and some real listening. This is uncut. This is uncensored. This is Black and Blue Live. Welcome to Black and Blue Live, everybody. How you guys doing out there? My name is Dale. I'm the host. There's my homegirl over there, Lizzie. What's going on, young lady? How you doing? Adjust that camera. Adjust that camera. You going the wrong way. The other way. The other way. There you go.
Hey.
Hey. We want you on camera here. Don't be trying to hide. Don't be scared.
Like, let me eat my food. No.
So how's it going?
It's going really well. Blessed. Everybody getting healthy. I see the vaccination numbers are up and the numbers are coming down. So everybody keep practicing. Excellent preventive measures, and we'll be back open soon. So I'm super excited about that. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited. I'm ready to get this show going today. We got some real interesting and awesome guests here. So I want to get to them here in a second. As everybody sees out there, I want to thank everybody for joining us live here on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Make sure that you go to those channels and you like and you subscribe to us. We could really use the support. Everybody out there watching the show, we support you, supporting us. I love it. So thank you. Yes, indeed. So our show today is going to be African-American military leaders, as the lower third banner there shows. We're going to talk to some military officers, minority military officers. And but before we get into that, I want to give some shout outs to some of my peoples that have been, let's see here, in the military for back in the day. I've got right here, this is my Uncle Howard, who's no longer with us, but he served in the Air Force years ago. I want to give a shout out to him. And his son, my cousin Alan, also served in the Air Force. I grew up with him. He's like a brother. I'm going to be visiting him real soon. Shout out to my boy Alan in Florida. And their legacy right there, because his son, Manny Peters, also serves in the Air Force today. So he is currently
now.
Yes. He is currently staff sergeant in the Air Force. That is him right there. So I wanted to give him a shout out, give that family a shout out. There's some military leaders right there, and you got some people you wanted to shout out too, right? Let me pull up.
Absolutely.
Here's your first one. Who's this?
Yeah, so this is my Aunt Winona. She served in the Air Force. I love her so much. And there are so many of my family, but these are the pictures I could grab up. So my Aunt Winona served in the Air Force for many years.
Okay.
And I just love her to life.
All right, who's this?
This is my uncle. Avon, and he also served in the military. This is an old school picture.
All right. And this one here?
This is my uncle, Homer. He served in, I believe this is the Army, maybe the Air Force. He was in the military also.
Okay, all right. Yeah, you got a gang of family.
Yeah, quite a few people.
Yeah.
This is my cousin Jeremy. He served in the Army.
All right.
My baby cousin, yes.
And who's that?
And this is my uncle. I'm sorry, my cousin James Smith. He served in the Navy also. He's probably like, I can't believe she put that picture out there. I did it, James. I love you, though. I love you.
All right. And last but certainly not least, somebody that's near and dear to us that worked with us for a few years, recently retired, Corporal Kelvin Bryant, served in the Air Force as well. So we want to give a shout out to him. A lot of Air Force on this show, and that's a sign of things to come here. We got, let me go back here to our introduction. I'm sorry I brought you guys up too early. Let me get out of that. Yes, I want to bring you up. I want to give you your due.
You're trying to have bells and whistles.
Yes, our first guest. Our first guest here, he is a commander in the United States Navy. Everybody, please help us welcome in Commander Desmond Walker.
Hello, Dale. Hello, Elizabeth. How are you doing this evening?
We are good. We're so glad you're here with us. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself and your career?
Sure. So I'm Commander Desmond Walker, originally from Hollandale, Mississippi. Served in the Navy for 24 years. I enlisted back in 1996, selected as an officer 2003, I went to Norfolk State University, to their ROTC unit, commissioned there in 2005 as a nuclear trained surface warfare officer. And I've served on 5 ships thus far, and have had a wonderful career thus far.
All right.
Thank you
Thank you for
so much
joining
for
us.
joining us.
Yeah, appreciate you
Yes,
for your
glad to be here.
service. Thank you for your service.
Yeah.
All right.
Now, our next guest is Colonel Henderson, and she commands the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, OSI, the Navy's version of NCIS, if you all watch the TV show. She is the first Black woman to hold that position, and we want to welcome her to this show.
All right.
Thank you for joining
Hi,
us.
Dale. Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for
Hello.
having me. Hi, just one slight correction. I'm not the commander of all of the Office of Special Investigations. I am the commander over one region, which is there's a total of 7 regions. And so I'm a commander over one of those for overseeing all of the investigative units on Air Mobility Command. So, unlike Desmond, so I'm old enough to not want to date myself by giving, each one of my career milestones. But I will say, again, I'm Colonel Tamara Henderson. I am originally from Inglewood, California.
All
And I
right.
initially,
The ING in the
yeah,
house.
the wood. So I initially joined the Air Force. I enlisted. And I came right out of high school before I was in the Air Force for my 18th birthday. And but I served for a few years before I went to officer training school, where I was commissioned as a second lieutenant, and here I am today. The Air Force Office of the Office of Special Investigations, again, as you said, we hate to compare it to NCIS, but the bottom line is, yes, that's what we do. We're a federal law enforcement agency that oversees criminal and counterintelligence operations for the Air Force and for DoD across throughout the world. So
All
again,
right.
thank you for
So
having
technically,
me.
you're not
Yes.
even here. This is just an illusion.
This is just an illusion.
This is just an illusion. Got it.
Well, thank you for your service, Colonel. We appreciate you. And last but
Thank you.
certainly not least, he was a lieutenant colonel in the United States Marine Corps. So I'm sure we got a bunch of devil dogs here in the audience. Everybody, please help us welcome in. He is now a doctor, Dr. Larry Parker Jr.
Welcome.
Hey, I really appreciate that, Dale and Elizabeth. It's great to be here. How am I coming through it? You hear me?
Yeah, you
Everything
sound
okay?
great. Sound good. Sound good.
Hey, well, again, happy to be here. And just like my colleagues that are on, humble beginnings coming into this, I will go ahead and put this disclaimer out here. We're going to get this out quick so no one else can hear it later. I am an Army brat. I started out, my father, I've lived on Fort Bragg and right outside of Fort Hood most, my youth coming up. But I called my going into the Marine Corps my last rebellious act as I left home, and home is Temple, Texas. So Temple, Texas, and really I came up around the David Robinson age time, so I played ball and initially found myself going off to the Naval Academy, and so went there to go play. But I didn't settle down and handle the books the way I needed to. So I spent 2 years there, but then had to make my exit over to a school in Ohio, Wittenberg University. And while I was there, introduced to a program called PLC, the Platoon Leaders Course. And through that program, it's still a commissioning program. It's still something that really it doesn't commit you to the same way that an ROTC or some other program like that. And I knew I wanted to serve after seeing my father pursue and then seeing other family members. That allowed me to go through and find myself where I am now. Is 24 years in the Marine Corps as a supply officer. And after hardship of education, once I started, I'm like, okay, I'm going to ride this thing all the way out. And so that's where the doctorate came in. And so education all the way throughout, and find myself here now after a long career and still in education.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for your service, sir. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
We absolutely appreciate the
Yeah.
journey. And before we move on, we just want to acknowledge Colonel Shahbaz. He was unable to join us today because his unit had an emergency, but he is a Muslim chaplain and one of only 10 in the U.S. Army. He and his wife mentor Black and Brown youth, so we want to keep our prayers with him as he is handling business. They are on call 24/7, but we do want to get the show on the road. Also, just a disclaimer, everything said here today is from opinion and not representative of any organization, entity of the United States government, or any way, shape, or form. It is the opinions and the expressions of our guests and hosts today. So that being said, I'm excited you all are here and join us.
Yes, let's get to it. Here we go. All right. So thank you for joining us here today. Let me get that comment off real quick. Before we move on, I want to encourage everybody to send in your questions, your comments. We'll have a running chat on the side there. So thank you, Dr. Angela Pope. Thanking everybody, all of our guests for the service. So keep those coming in. For the first half of the show, we're just going to get into questions and comments with our guests. But the second half of the show, we're going to bring up your comments. So if you want to put a Q in front of your question, so that our screener, Elizabeth, my wife, Elizabeth, not the other one you see here on the screen here, but producer Liz,
the
so
real
she
boss.
knows that it's, yes, yeah, the real boss, so that she knows that, this is going to be a question. She can put those in the queue and we can bring those up later. So everybody, we could do that, and then we'll keep this going. So keep those comments going. We appreciate that. So everybody, thank you for joining us here, guest. So we went into the introductions and we saw everything that your positions hold and everything. Each of you being African Americans in your positions. Let me ask you first, Commander Walker. What sort of, because I know you've spoken on diversity in the Navy, probably in the Marine Corps as well. What's your opinion on diversity in the military as far as the administrative ranks, a lieutenant and above, officers in the military? Do you see a lot of that going on? Does the military need to do some more work on recruitment on that? What's your opinion on that?
That's a great question, Dale. I think that it's the data shows that we have to do more across all services. We look at the data, I think, going through 2020, on average, our enlisted ranks are represented well above the demographic representation of the country. As for instance, I think for African Americans, we make up around 14% of the American population, but enlisted wise, I think we're at around 25%. Whereas in the officer ranks, we are well below the 14%. I think we're at somewhere between 7 and 8%. So we could always do more. And to your point about recruiting, I think recruiting is only a piece of it. There is a retention aspect to it as well that I think services should definitely put more attention to.
Absolutely, absolutely. What about you, Colonel, Lieutenant Colonel Parker? We'll call you Dr. Parker. What's your opinion on that? Can you hear us, Dr. Parker? I guess he can't hear us. We will move on there, and yeah, go ahead there, Lizzie.
Colonel Henderson, what would you say in regards to that for women and the retention of women in the military? Have you seen an increase in retention and opportunity and intentionality for recruitment, or do you feel that there still needs to be, like as Commander Walker said, a lot more effort too in those areas?
I 100% agree with Commander Walker. I think there is intentionality with recruitment, but I also believe that it's the retention that tends to be the problem. You can bring as many people in as you want, but if if they're not feeling included, and there's not that sense of upward mobility, people are not going to stay. And so I think the Air Force, in particular, has made great strides as far as trying to become more inclusive, opening up more career fields for women. and making more opportunity. But absolutely, there needs to be the data just shows there needs to be more work as far as opportunity for upward mobility. You see a lot, the numbers tend to look pretty good when you look at the lower level and the lower ranks. But as you begin to ascend, those numbers start to, fade out a little bit. And it's because, their career fields, for whatever reason, there's lots of reasons people enter certain career fields, but those career fields some career fields tend to have more opportunity for upward mobility than others. And so we need to do a better job of not only when we recruiting into certain career fields and ensuring that everybody knows that, hey, when you come in, these are the career fields that are going to lead more to promotion at the senior ranks. And there's all kind of issues with childcare, with deployments. There's a lot of issues that have to be addressed, and it's not just with women. It's with men too. We're finding that
Right.
the male service members, they want that stability just as much as women want the stability. So I really think that as a whole, recruitment is one, but retention is definitely the key.
All right. Real quick before we move on, I know off air we kind of mentioned, Colonel Henderson, that your job responsibilities also entail the Space Force, and that's kind of a new agency that not too many people know about. Can you kind of inform us on the Space Force and what they kind of do and how large are their ranks right now?
Yeah, so I don't know all of the numbers with Space Force, but what I do know is that OSI is the felony law enforcement branch for both the Air Force and the Space Force. So just like the Marines or the Navy, NCIS covers both the Navy and the Marine Corps because Space Force falls under the Department of the Air Force. We are also their federal law enforcement branch as well. So we that is a new area, but again, we're about protecting, resources, Air Force and now Space Force resources, and all of anything that encroaches upon DoD, the DoD area. So it is new and it is getting bigger.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, because we heard about Space Force. I was like, what is that? I heard of it recently, and I guess it's for our ventures out into the wild blue yonder in space and all that. So, all right,
Right, our
good to
space,
see that.
yeah, they're now called. We have Guardians. They're the Space Force is called Guardians, as we're airmen, Army of soldiers, and the Space Force are Guardians.
Guardians. Oh, okay. Learn something new every day.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Of the
Listen,
galaxy.
I'm all
Oh, no.
for it. I want the sword though.
Yeah. All right. All right. So each of you being military officers, how is that process? How does one become an officer in the military? Lieutenant Colonel Henderson, I'm sorry, Lieutenant Colonel Parker, are you back on now? Can you hear us? I don't think he can still hear us. So we will try to get him connected. In the meantime, let's see. Commander Walker, can you kind of tell us?
Because
There you go. There you go. Now you can hear us. This is live, ladies and gentlemen.
I think he's muted.
Yeah, I think he's muted. Why don't you take over there, Commander Walker, and then we'll get him
Sure
back
thing.
on. Go ahead.
No problem. All right. So roughly speaking, there's three paths into the Navy as an officer through the Naval Academy, through the Officer Candidate School, or the Reserve Officer Training Corps. And then within those three paths, enlisted personnel are presented with opportunities as well to get in line through those paths.
Okay. And what was your path?
So I was an enlisted officer. It was a program called Seaman to Admiral 21. And that process, when I was selected, they sent me back to school to get my degree. And while I was at the school, I was also assigned to the ROTC unit so that once I completed my degree, I also graduated having met all the requirements for commissioning.
Okay. Yeah, I've always been interested in how that works. I have a great respect for everyone that's served, whether enlisted or in the commission program. So, yeah, I appreciate everything you guys do. That's a long, hard path. So you went from your ROTC, you graduated, and then what's the path after that as far as and what's the rank? Is it an ensign, lieutenant? What is it in the Navy?
Correct. Yes, it's ensign, and so while you're in the ROTC or at the Naval Academy, you you're competing for what we call designators. The Army and Air Force, I think they call them MOSs. And when you're competing for those opportunities to get on that career path. So I selected nuclear surface warfare officer. So my career progression is to one day be a commanding officer of a ship and to also be the reactor officer on our nuclear powered aircraft carriers and running those as part of the Navy's nuclear propulsion program. And that's roughly a 20-year career. So you come in as an ensign. At some point, you achieve the rank of captain or colonel. That's the comparison with those leadership opportunities, and you have stepstones along the way where you develop yourself personally and professionally, supporting and maturing toward those top leadership positions.
All right, all right. And it looks like someone was able to make it to the show after all. Um, Welcome to the show, Colonel Shahbaz. How you doing, sir? Let's give you your fanfare there.
Hey.
Here, man. I'm stressing out at my job. I said, I know I need to take care of y'all, but I got obligations.
Well, we thank you for
Thank
making
you,
the
guys.
time to come out and hang out with us for a little bit. Thank you, thank you. Real quick before we move on with our question, why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do in the U.S. Army?
Yeah, College Shahbaz. I am a chaplain in the United States Army. Just happens to be the highest ranking Muslim chaplain in the history of the United States military. I'm out at the United States Army RSET, and my job is I'm just taking care of soldiers in my spare time. I'm a professor, author, and a motivational speaker. All right.
All right, thank you for joining us. Appreciate you. Appreciate you. Thank you for that you can finally come in. We understood that you had an emergency, so we're glad that you got through that and you're safe and that you were able to make it back as well. So thank you. Let's see.
Yes.
Is Dr. Parker? Are you okay? Are you there? Looks like you're frozen there. Okay, we will.
Thinking
Hopefully,
right
Dr.
now.
Parker can come back. Ladies and gentlemen, this is live, so so make sure you keep sending in those questions and comments. If you we'll get those chat going here on the side here, and if you put a Q in front of your question, we will make sure we get that on at a later time in the program. So go ahead, Elizabeth. Next question there. Go ahead.
So I'm going to kind of throw a little bit of a curveball because we talked about earlier diversity and retention. And we have the honor of being here with a panel of quite a few people who have promoted into high ranks or positions of influence and power. Do you feel, and I'll start with you, Colonel Shahbaz, do you feel that, or did you have a mentor? What was, I guess, a key factor in helping you to stay the course and to continue to build? And then if Colonel Henderson, if you want to chime in, and then Commander Walker, what do you feel was strategic or important in your process to getting to these leadership roles?
Yeah, great question, and thank you for the question. I was seeking mentorship. I tried to, attach myself to a couple of people, but those people seemed to wanted to make me clones of them. And my personality is one of the sayings I have for myself is I'm influenced by many, defined by none. So I believe that each of us are individuals within ourselves, and we should take advice from people, but find our own way and our own identity. And one of the things I was blessed to get when I was a young captain is an article, and I'll send it out to everybody if you hadn't read it. It's called "Why Black Officers Fail," and I honestly I use that as a guide to guide me through my career. And one of the things it was talking about African Americans not taking the hard jobs. At the hint of racism or discrimination, we kind of fold back and we kind of eliminate ourselves at the hint of gender bias and things like that. And one of the things, and I'll let Colonel Henderson talk. One of the things it was talking about being strong enough in your attitude of those who came before you to fight through some of those things to make sure you get to a position where you can reach back and be a mentor for other people. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank
And
you.
Colonel Henderson, are you there? Okay. There you
I
go.
I am.
Okay. Go ahead there.
Okay. So I've had a lot of, I came in, like I said, I came in right out of high school, and my sole purpose was to go to college, to get money for college and to get my education. And that's what I did. But I also, along the way, enjoyed what I was doing. And so that was my path. And when we talked about, the different career paths, I I went strictly, I got my degree while I was on active duty, just going, to night school. And I got picked up for officer training school. So, one day I was an E6, and the next day I was off at officer training school. And, a few months later, I was a second lieutenant. So what has kept me are all the opportunities. I think a lot of people don't really realize or stay around long enough to take advantage of the opportunities to go up the ranks. The Air Force has paid for two master's degrees, in addition to the bachelor's degree that they got me. So that's what I've done. I've taken some of the tougher jobs, to say, hey, I'm willing to step up and do those and just really stay the course. You don't always get what you feel like you want or even what you felt like you deserve. But just to hang in there. Sometimes I say, hey, I've just hung out long enough. Then hey, I get knocked down but get back up and just really fight for those opportunities. And just make sure you're ready. One piece of advice that I always tell people is when you get called off the bench, you got to be ready to go. You can't say, wait a minute, hold on, let me go
Right.
get my shoes on. Because often
Yeah.
that's what
Right.
happens. And sadly, that's what happens with minority officers. Sometimes it's just everybody else is kind of playing chess with their career, and we tend to play pickup games. But you got to be
Mm,
ready
mm.
for that pickup game. When you get that opportunity, you get your shot. You gotta take it. Be ready to take it.
That's right. That's
That's
right.
good. That's
Absolutely.
good.
Good words of advice right there. Good words of advice. You know, Dr. Parker spoke about earlier, real quick, about being an Army brat, and I always kind of wondered about you guys being always on the go, on the go. How is that conducive to family life? Do any of you have families, and how is that in your family life having to pick up? Colonel Henderson just spoke about when you get that call, take it, take it. Are you able to do so with your? And how's your family feel about that? Go ahead, Dr. Parker. Go ahead.
Um, you know, it's one of those things that you really try to develop some kind of balance, but it can really be trying because people talk about deployments, multiple deployments, and they're not including a lot of times the workups to get to that. So, you add several months on to that on the front end, and I know, I have two sons, and the thing that made me really think about it was I was deploying back to back. Uh, you know, one year I left and I missed all the holidays, birthdays, everything, all 2 years in a row, and then to have I believe my oldest was about 9 at the time, and he just asked me, "Oh, okay, so are you going to miss my birthday again?" And it was just a very poignant conversation, and it made you think about it. And then for me, being an Army brat, as you allude to, uh, I recognize how much of a norm that was for me because my father left us in one location to try to give us as much of a normal life as possible. But he spent time in Korea, spent time in Germany, and he was always gone. So, for my experience, it was very challenging, at least growing up. But then for rearing children, you become very aware that they're paying attention to it. So it's not something that you just do and you're not aware of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
got you there. And Commander Walker, real quick, if you want to jump in on that, please.
Oh,
Always
you're muted,
says,
sir. Okay.
There you go.
oh,
No, we got you. Go ahead.
okay. One of my mentors always says the Navy recruits the sailor but retains the family. And
Mm,
I found that to be very true throughout my career. It tends to be a balance between career planning and family planning. And the more deliberate you are about both of those sides, the
That's
more
right.
informed decisions the family can make, which then
That's right.
coincides making when you have to then take those hard jobs, like Colonel Henderson said, you're taking those hard jobs because you know it's tied to a family goal, not just a personal career goal. And thinking when you can strike that balance, the family's participation in military service then becomes a little more bearable because you're sharing that burden.
Yeah, indeed. Got you there. Go ahead. Next question,
Yeah,
do
Lisa.
you
Go
all?
ahead.
it's an old
Go ahead.
saying that it's better to be a family in the street than strangers in the home. I think
Mm,
I love what the commander said that you got to be intentional. I've been deployed 7 times, and actually, I've been in school for the last 25 years, trying to recover my life, 2 doctors and 4 master's degrees. But a lot of my work on those degrees or deployments, when I'm at home, I'm at home. I have 3 children, so each one of them had a day, and then I had a day off. I've been married 30 years, and my wife had a day, right? And so you're going to be out that door, you're going to be studying somewhere. I love what the commander said. You got to be very intentional about that. A lot of times we just, when we're back in garrison, we're working 8, 9 at night. I had a policy, and some of my bosses didn't like it, and I was willing not to get the highest marks, but I would leave at 5 o'clock, go home and have dinner with my family, and I tell them, "Sir, ma'am, I'll be back, but I need to go have family dinner." And a couple of them didn't like that, and I didn't get the highest marks, but I wasn't willing to sacrifice my family for that. So you got to be intentional.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll just add. Yeah, I'll just add, and I really want to, like the Colonel said, I want to give a shout out to the families and especially the children. We signed up for this, and sometimes spouses they signed up for it too, right? Because they married into the family, but kids they just showed up, right? And this is their life. My
That's right.
my son, he's an adult now, but he spent in his just high school. He went to 7 different schools, and I know that it's 7
wow.
because he reminds me of that
Mm,
all the time. That it
yeah.
was always picking up and going. And kids are flexible and and they roll with the punches. But you cannot do it without the support of your family. So, and especially for single parents, if you don't have that support, of someone who's going to be there during those late nights when you have to deploy, you definitely have to have a supportive family behind you, whether that's your immediate family or an extended family.
Right.
For real. For real. Well, kids really, if you think about it, they just care about you being there. They don't care where you are. We could be in Japan, we could be in Inglewood, wherever we're at, so long as we're there as a family. So that's all they really care about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yep.
Piggybacking off of everyone talking about, being intentional and family, but also education and how education played a lot into kind of your career roles and things like that. And we'll start with you, Dr. Pastor, and then Dr. Parker, and then Colonel Shahbaz, and then Commander and Colonel Henderson, if you all want to jump in also. How do you feel, especially for minorities, that if you didn't have your education, would you have had the opportunities or the doors open, or did you feel that it was a necessity in this particular, in your field in the military, to get the pickup game? Because maybe without it, you wouldn't have been invited to the game, to the court at all. But do you feel
That's
that
right.
the education helped you get invited, or education was really more of a fallback? A lot of officers do education as a fallback in case we get injured. Do you feel that this was a necessity for you to go forward in your careers?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Actually, I saw it as a necessity. No, it's one of those things. I was slow to get started. I got started probably as a captain. When I say slow, because some individuals, as they joined the service, they were able to pick up and start their masters immediately. They continued school, and everybody talks about the professional education, and you're always going to get that. Make sure that you get it and that you go to resident if you can go. But I had a general officer that she had 2 PhDs, and she really stressed that this is part of your professional development and your personal development. And the most important thing is to show up. And during one of her visits, she made sure to just, hey, register. And I held back, and it was not until I had a number of junior Marines that were bringing their forms for education for me to sign off. And as a young officer, you're signing that they're okay to go out and get their education, that it's not going to interfere with their duties. And it was after a young enlisted Marine started to surpass me. He was working on his master's. He was like, "Hey, sir, I need you to sign this." I'm like, "Oh God,"
Yeah.
And once I got started, I saw it was something that was starting to set me apart. And luckily, I had the right mentors along the way that made sure that once you get started, you continue to go. And at each promotion, and I'll just say this both for your personal education and then your professional, for any of those that are still in the service and thinking about it, some of the greatest words that were told to me is, you don't know where your career is going to take you. So you make sure you sign up for the distance. And so I'm throwing that out there because individuals talk about, hey, go western or whatever else. And for those that are not in the military, we can discuss that at another point. But you just make sure that you have all the credentials. And I'll go back on what something Colonel Henderson said about being ready. When you tell me an opportunity is there, but you have to have this, but you have to have that, I just want to be able to turn back, grab whatever credential you just asked for, or have you go to my record and see. And so
Oh yeah.
that was the greatest thing. As I start to
Mm-hmm.
get later in my career, individuals will look at my record and say, "Okay, well you already have that, but okay, well you have that," and that helped me so much. And so when I completed my doctorate, they were even looking at it like, "Okay, what else can you do?" And so it was great. It made a big difference for me to have my education both professionally and personally.
No doubt. Colonel Shahbaz.
Colonel Shahbaz?
Yeah, growing up in the South, mama and grandmama used to say, you got to work twice as hard to have half as much, right? And so for me,
Yep.
I understood that, but I wasn't ready for it. But it was only after, a lot of tragedy in my life. I was molested at 10 years old, special education in the 8th grade, failed the 9th and 12th grade. I got to college, was trying to be somebody I wasn't, got shot in the back, put in jail, and was thrown out of college. And so when I got to the military, long story short, that's why I said I've been in school for the last 25 years. I was trying to recover my life. And then at that point, I realized something that Doc said, and something my grandmother said: if you're gonna make it here, you got to be twice as good to get half as much. So I went a little bit extreme with 2 doctorates and 4 master's degrees, but one of the things I
Just a
wanted
little?
to do was just a little bit, just a little bit, just a little bit, just a
Got some
little
extra
bit.
credit.
But one of the things I
Right.
wanted to do was, because we talk about racism, discrimination, implicit bias. I wanted to, because I struggled with self-esteem all of my life. I wanted to know when they looked at my records, they have to discriminate against me, right? When they look at my records, I'm so overqualified. When if they don't choose me for a job, I can sleep well at night. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, because I
Yeah.
know that I'm qualified. I know that I'm overqualified. I know that I outpace my peers, and I made a lot of sacrifice for that. So to answer your question, I do believe, as an African American in this society, education is the great equalizer. Education in itself gives us an opportunity to get inside that door. You got to perform when you get there, but education gives us an opportunity to get there.
Thank you, Shahbaz.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Anybody else want to jump?
And so
Yeah.
the Navy has been very um, innovative from an education perspective, because in our version of a meritocracy, education is directly tied to career progression. It's like if you get to a
Mm.
certain point in your career and you haven't gotten a graduate education, then when your record goes before the board, they're going to say, "Oh, you had this opportunity to get education and you didn't." So
Oh
that's
wow.
going to count against you. And so for myself, got my bachelor's degree in Norfolk State. I got my first master's from Old Dominion University in engineering management, which was tied to my nuclear
Mm.
education. Then, while I worked at the Pentagon doing budgetary requirements for amphibious assault ships, things like that, kind of the same ships that your brother was on LSD 37, that kind of same thing. I decided to get my MBA as well, with emphasis in human resources
Yes.
management, because by that point I had recognized not only am I kind of a people person, but I also have this budgetary kind of financial experience. So I personally wanted to have some credentials outside of the military that accentuated or exponentially increased the value of the in-job experience that I got, such that, kind of like uh, Colonel Shahbaz said, if they look at my record and they still don't pick me, I'll be okay. And we have to, and that's tied directly to the deliberate planning that I talked about before. I know I want to try to be a flag officer one day. So when I was a lieutenant, okay, what do the flag officers now have? What do the captains
Mm.
have? And so looking
Peace.
out those 10 years, okay, these are the kind of things I need to do. These are the kind of jobs I need to take, along with listen to my mentors. And so if I get it, great. But if I don't, Commander retired Desmond Walker will be just fine. And I can continue moving on with other things that I'd want to do.
Awesome.
Yes. Yes. Love that.
That's
Good,
so
Elizabeth. You
key.
had a
Thank you
follow
for
up?
all these jewels and these gems. I'm excited. I do want to, and I'll start with Colonel Shahbaz, and I don't know if Dr. Parker or Commander Walker or Colonel Henderson feels in this lane, but you so graciously shared some of your journey and your personal journey and the areas of growing up and how you got to where you are. For law enforcement, mental health is just now becoming a priority for the officers and things like that. For in the and you as one of the chaplains, which is amazing too. And thank you for that portion that you give. Do you find that the military is prioritizing mental health of their soldiers more now, or in any of these fields, do you find that it's still got a stigma to it in terms of how they're treated or anything like that,
Oh,
or
of
are
course. I
they
mean,
less apt to ask for help?
I think the military on a wave top level is making it a priority, of course, but they're sitting in the balcony. You know, the grassroots where the soldiers are. You know, the first sergeant, the commander will say, "Oh, he's a problem soldier. Go see the chaplain." Next thing you
Mm.
know, you're going to be hanging out at behavior health. It's still a stigma on it because the military is such a, at least the Army, alpha male organization. And I could tell you a story here where I kind of got myself in a little trouble. But I believe in speaking. I won't say truth to power, but I just believe in being honest. I'm not trying to be outspoken, but one of the things that the GO said, he said, "Hey, we need to change our organization. We need to become more people friendly. We need to take care of the soldiers. And I said, very hesitantly, and I even started sweating, because I knew this was going to kind of rock the boat. But I said, sir, that doesn't start at the top. It has to be implemented at the bottom. And let me tell you a story. And I sit in on all these court martials, and this one young man had raped 4 women in a weekend, right? That's atrocious in itself. But let me tell you what's more atrocious. It gets to his character witnesses. Every character witness that came from his chain of command talked about his 300 PT score. What a travesty. He shouldn't have had any character witness because all they talked about was his physical fitness. So my point to that is, yes, it's a horrible stigma when it comes to going to see the chaplain or behavior health. And so we put together a couple of programs here, but it's hard for people to come because even in the organization where we are the caretakers, the soldiers don't even trust us. You know why? Because we get OERs, officer evaluation reports, from the commanding general. So they're afraid
Yeah.
we're going to tell. So unless we can separate us from the hierarchy where they control our careers, it's going to continue to be a stigma.
Just now. I just got out.
All right. We can hear
Okay,
somebody's
so
family business going on right now, but that's all right. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we are live. We are live, ladies and gentlemen. Keep those comments and questions coming, and we will get those up for you. I appreciate everyone's testimony that's been on the panel so far. We got some questions already for you guys, so let's break to that part of the show here. Where you got Dr. Angela Pope. Yeah, go
Hi,
ahead. Go ahead.
Dale. Can I just say one thing, just from the
Absolutely.
Air Force perspective, just
Yeah.
because I think I have a different perspective from the Air Force than with the Army. I've been in a long time, and I'm also a field level commander. So I have seen where mental health has come from in the Air Force, and I
Yeah.
would say in DoD in general. And for the Air Force, I think that the stigma has largely been, I won't say eliminated, but it's been removed. Where people are comfortable going now, whether or not there's enough resources to handle all of the
Right.
mental health that they need, that's probably a different story. But I really have seen the stigma being removed, and people feeling more comfortable. Not only have we done a lot to remove the stigma, the younger people today coming in don't have that same fear of going to mental health, and they understand. I know in all of my units, we really talk about taking that knee early, and not waiting until you're circling the drain, the third time, and you're
Right.
kind of going off the rails. But if you get it early, and I find a lot of people are taking advantage of it, so much so that resources become a problem, rather than what used to be stigma.
Yeah. Love that. Real quick, go ahead, Dr. Parker.
Yeah, and I appreciate the opportunity. Uh, just as Dr. Shahbaz pointed out, early on in my career, I saw the same thing. It was an alpha male approach, and any of the support services, even chaplain, it was Padre, chaplain, hey, swing in, say this, and hey, pray us out. I was one of, it's that approach. We want to keep moving. And if
Yeah.
something happened to your Marine that took them out of the fight, it was heavily contested, because that's a
Yeah.
resource. That's something that, you were provided a body to go do a job. And, even the connotation, or at least alluding to mental health back then. And I was the executive officer in the unit as we were getting ready to go. It's like, hey, send them to the wizard. So again, even that connotation,
Mm,
the wizard,
Yeah.
to look at their head, see what they say.
mm.
And I remember at times having someone say, okay, well, that's just a suggestion. As the
Uh,
commanding officer, I can determine what I'm going to take
yes,
and what I'm going to
that's
do.
right.
Now, we talk about, now that's back in the 90s. Uh, have I seen it improve? Yes, because it's been pushed even further. So as I deployed more and more, a decade later, Yes. Is it, if someone is stating that they have a problem, are they more inclined to listen or more inclined to send them to help? Yes. Is it still a stigma? I would say that there probably is. There's slight, it's small, it's reduced, but there's still something there because at the end of the day,
Yeah,
it's about mission and it's about moving forward. And when you're deployed, if you're not, as we say, in the fight, then someone else is
that's
picking
right.
up your responsibility. And so now
That's
it's the
right.
job of those mental health professionals and those leaders to change that narrative that it's not that the person's being taken out of the fight. Actually, they're probably being able to perform even better if they're
That's right.
given that mental health or given that opportunity to get that mental health. So those are
That's right.
that point I just want to touch on.
That's
Absolutely.
good points.
Yep.
Do you, before we move on, and I know we have a question, I kind of want to touch on this too with the mental health and support systems with all of the climate going on, especially like with law enforcement, with Black Lives Matter, and a lot of the revisiting and re-envisioning many of our infrastructures within our nations. Do you find that your officers of color have expressed or there's like that inner conflict, if you will? You know, when we talk to some of our other officers, there's that inner conflict of, yes, I love serving. Yes, I love my nation. But yes, I'm in the skin I'm in and it's real. And so do you all find that conversation now happening a lot more um, with your officers of color? And is there a support system even within the community, the sub communities, of just saying, hey, we see you, we hear you, or is that still taboo? And Commander Walker, if you want to jump in, and then Colonel Shahbaz and everyone else.
Yes. So, I'll in shortly after, I'll pick a point in time just for context. Shortly after George Floyd was killed, um, that shook everybody. If you were African American and you saw what happened, you were shook. And a very good friend of mine, Captain Marcus Kennedy, wrote an article for a Navy institution, a Procedures magazine, about intrusive leadership. And the point of his article was leaders just need to ask their Coast Guardmen, their sailors, their airmen, their seamen, are you okay? Because that struck a chord with our community. And then that article inspired me to write one as well, called "The Burden of a Black Naval Officer," where I kind of characterize um,
Mm,
the the story of racial injustice in the military, bookended with two chiefs of naval operations, going back with Admiral Zumwalt, who was the 19th CNO, and then the 32nd CNO, where in this 50-year span, shortly after George Floyd was killed, the current CNO echoed the same sentiment about racism is in our military, it's wrong, discrimination is wrong, and we need to do something about it. And it was a painful but cathartic article to write, because in one instance you have this contemporary recognition that there are issues, but at the same time, in 50 years, we still feel like nothing has changed. And so then moving on past that, we have conversations where orders come out, where commanders and commanding officers are told or directed to have these conversations with their teammates and to try to advance the problem towards solutions, even so much to where they established a task force, who's called Task Force One Navy, that was headed by the director, Rear Admiral Alvin Halsey, where they ended up with 56 recommendations coming from this thing, to where it's time to actually put action to these burdens that we have carried, as part of not just being service to our country, but also to being a part of the citizenry. And so, in it, all the while, we still have our Facebook groups and our text groups and our Facebook Messenger groups where we locally still have to support each other. Even right now, I got 3 different groups in Facebook where I got brothers that I reach out to talk about what I'm feeling with in the moment. And so I'm sure that happens across the services.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
Right. I would say, before George Floyd, talking, there weren't conversations about racism. The closest that we got to it was unconscious bias, and even that was, kind of a real delicate conversation. But after the George Floyd murder, we're going to just call it, it was it really opened up a lot of wounds, I think, and people needed to talk, and everybody recognized that. So since then, there has been a lot of conversations, about how people have been feeling, and things that have been taking place, across the country, within the service, and outside the gates. So I think it is becoming more open, but there's a whole lot more dialogue that needs to take place.
For real. For real.
Now, I don't
Colonel
know if Dr.
Shahbaz.
Shahbaz is.
You're muted, sir.
I think you're still muted.
Can you hear me?
There you go. There you go.
Now we can.
Okay, yeah. So I was at the Army War College during that time, and I had a subject that I wanted to write on, but then I changed it to moral injury. And those of you who are familiar with moral injury, it's not just the act of doing something in war that is that makes you uncomfortable or affects your soul, because you started off talking about the dichotomy of serving and with the racial implicit bias. So I chose moral injury. And what's interesting about that, when you choose a subject like that, you're just trying to be scholarly and add to the conversation. But what happens is you get pulled into the back room and talked to like it's an FBI investigation, right? Like, why are you writing this? And so, I have to explain why I'm writing this and why it's important as a 06 in the United States Army for those people who are coming behind me, that this article is written well and is published. Second thing, when I get to my new unit, one of the things that the people that I'm in processing with always say, well, I don't see color, everything is green. So again, I got to take these deep breath. I'm from Louisiana, so we've been conditioned to just say yes sir and no sir. But I think as an African American senior, I think it's a time to have a little courage. I'm not telling you to be bombastic, but one of the things I told the person was, well, if I said, ma'am, sir, that's called micro invalidation. When you say you don't see color, you're invalidating my existence. I say, let me help you help your soldiers. And you can say, you see my color, but I won't discriminate against you because I'm a fair person. That was met with a 45-minute conversation because it was done intellectually and it wasn't done attacking the person. Okay. And so we had a great conversation. Thirdly, like the commander said, we had all of this training. And one of the things I did before the training started, because I was kind of put in charge by the chief of staff, and one of the things I told him, you guys speak openly. However, I don't ever want you to feel that this is non-attributional. I mean, we got a history. So please speak openly. But as we say in the Army, do what your rank can stand, because people still are going to be around you in these units. And so what I suggested is what the commander suggested, or what he does now, is to get some groups outside, scream, cry, be emotional, but you got to be very careful. We go back to what Colonel Henderson said. You're playing chess. I know it's emotional time. Yet 3 of my brothers, God bless them, they went on Facebook, had rants talking about Caucasian Americans. All 3 of them, lieutenant colonels, were relieved because they were talking about the commander. They were talking about the president of the United States. 15-6, general officer letters of reprimand, careers are over, and now they're blaming the Army. No, it's you. You're in the senior position. You can't be that emotional. That's it. Thank you.
Yes,
If I
indeed.
could, I love this, and the point about playing chess. And I go back to your original premise when you say, "Are you in conflict?" Absolutely, because when you look at the numbers on the enlisted side, the racial balance is more in line. But when you come into the officer side, there's very few individuals that look like us the higher we go. And so, as the services, understandably, are conservative in nature. Everybody knows. I saw some junior Marines that identified as one party or as Republican or just being conservative, just because, as tradition or as history has shown, one service or one party, tends to do a little bit more for the military budget, and they know
Yes.
no other reason why. Just young people just saying, "Oh well, that's where raises come from, and that's where whatever." And still
Right.
misguided in that. But my whole point is now you're in a room. The more senior you become, you're in a room with individuals that don't look like you, and they assert their opinion. And then there's that moment in time in which you have to do a value check. And as Colonel Shahbaz was saying, is play chess. Know that you may be intentionally or unintentionally being baited to give your opinion, and then there would be repercussions. Now,
That's
I'm
right.
going to flip this. This is
Mhm.
an interesting point because right after the George Floyd murder, I mentor individuals all races, um, and
Yes.
actively, even still now I'm retired, I still have officers that reach out to me, and I'm talking them through their career. But this one interesting phone call I got was from a white officer. Now, this had just happened, and let's just say he was at a school where we pulled him out of their normal duties, and he's off with other services, and they're going to be there for about a year, 2 years off at the senior school, and they don't have the freedom to come and go. And what had just happened was a email went out from a minority instructor, and he replied in such a way as if discounting someone else's feelings on an issue in the classroom. Now, he happens to be a bald white individual. And I even told him just quite point blank, I said, unfortunately, you are the picture of what is being viewed as white
Mhm.
supremacy right now. I mean, if we were to sit there, I love him to death, but I, he asked, well, so what do I do? What do I do? I said, hey, you're from the South,
So
you got
one
your
time you
shaved head.
fit the profile.
Yeah, and I told him, he said, sir, when he made that fatal social media or email mistake, he hit reply all by accident. And he blasted it out. And he said within 10 minutes, he started getting all these things from his classmates. And he said, sir, what do I do? And I said, well, unfortunately, now he didn't say anything wrong, but what the person was saying, how dare you invalidate my feelings? How dare you? You don't have a right to say I can't feel what I'm feeling.
Yeah,
And really, the best advice I could give him right now, I said, you're going to have to ride this one out. There was no, the individual wanted
that part.
to meet with him. And he immediately went to the senior officer of his service. And I said, by all means, do not meet with him because he's hurting. These other
Mm,
individuals are hurting. And it was
mm.
the best way I could tell him because I said, right now, this was about a week or 2 weeks after George Floyd was murdered. And I said, everyone, especially of color, and they're in a place where in this uniform, they can't get out. And all their emotions are bottled up right now. And you happen to peek your head up over the berm, as we would say, and you're a target right now. And so I tell you, and that's ultimately what he had to do. He just said, hey, there's going to be time that you're going to have the opportunity to talk. They called them together and everything else like that. But I said, it's some challenges even on the other side as well. And so that was just a point that I just want to make, that even they don't know how to act in some of these situations on how to address and come to us in those instances.
So I also think some of the conversations that we're trying to have, we're asking people to understand what's going on now. without any historical context. Because, some people, including people who look like us, don't have a true sense because it hasn't been taught. It's not taught in schools. You may get a little flavor of it, but I still have people who look me in the eye and tell me that the Civil War was about states' rights, and that's all they have learned about it. And
Oh Lord.
so I think we have to, right? I think we have to back up, because, and that's how I've approached it. And my unit is, hey, you know what? Let's back up. We all know what blatant racism looks like. Okay, nobody needs to be told what blatant racism looks like. It's that the undercurrents. It's why
Yep.
we have to help people understand why we need equity. Okay, and how the system became what the system is. And if you don't understand history and you don't back it up to look at, all of the I mean, first of all, the economic disadvantages or the economic advantages that have been given for hundreds of years, you're never going to understand what's going on today. So I think often when we have these conversations, we just focus on the here and now, and people just say, "Oh yes, that was wrong, but that's one bad apple," or no, nobody would do that. I think we have to understand. We have to take people back, and give some history lessons and show how we got here,
Yep.
because that's the only way we
Absolutely.
can move forward.
All
I think
right.
it's key too, as
Yeah.
Colonel Shahbaz mentioned, to not do it from an emotional place, but from an education and it's
Right.
very hard, and so you have to process. It's not to ignore the emotions, but be in a place to have the conversation, to not be triggered emotionally, so that you can effectively educate, and bring light and bring truth, because people won't convert regardless. There's going to be some
They
people
won't
that are going to
listen to
be,
you.
I shall
Yep.
not be moved. They're going to stay where they stay, but it won't be because they don't have the information they need. It will be because that is their choice and you can proceed that way. But I think that's so key in not being emotional and using the bigger picture and not the immediate response or the immediate issue at hand, but helping them to see the whole system in and of itself.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a
Absolutely.
great conversation, and I want to keep this going here, but I want to make sure we get these questions on that some of our viewers have posed to you guys in the panel. So let's make sure we get that on. Producer Liz, Dr. Angela Pope on YouTube asked, "What advice do you give young people who do not believe education is a component to help drive their careers?" Let's start with you, Dr. Parker.
The first thing I would tell them is, well, first, I don't know where you would have gotten that notion, because it really comes down to one point that we made earlier. Education is the uh, key to opening doors. And what we're finding now, it's a major discriminator today. Uh, a recent article noted that individuals say, hey, a lot of jobs out there that they don't understand how it requires a certain degree, a bachelor's, associates, or whatever, to do a certain job. And what that's actually communicating to you, that they're opening screens, or they're setting screens to keep individuals out. And so when we talk about education, and this is thing that you stress to all young people, you have to get that, because that's giving you one more key on your key ring. If someone is going to place a barrier before you, get that key. And you just got to
Hmm.
understand, you may not like education, you may not like going to school, but as I said earlier, if somebody is trying to deny me an opportunity that I see, whatever it is, and they say, but you need this, all I want to be able to do is check my record, and it's there. And that's, whether you go into a certain field or you choose to do something else, education is going to get you in the door.
All the way through. Colonel Shabazz.
And one of the things is I try to meet people where they are, right? Because people see your education, and I understand. Louisiana was second to last as far as educational, in the nation, and so a lot of people speak out of their pain and their trauma. So they may tell you they don't want an education, but they only tell you that because they don't think they're good in school. So that's when they have an opportunity to explain to them. And this is where I believe leaders need to be more transparent. And I had a lot of practice on this with my own children. I have 3 grown children who struggled some in school. And I learned to be very transparent with them about my failures in education. And because I did that with them, I won't say they began to love education, but they understood what doctor said, that this education is going to have a pathway to me getting where I want to go, right? And so when I explained it from that perspective, they did what they needed to do. And then, of course, being who I am and a motivational speaker, I have all kind of sayings. One of the sayings, I'll give you 2 sayings. One is, until you change the way you look at things, the things that you look at will never change, right? So I try to give an opportunity for people to look at things differently, as juxtaposed to just looking at the short term. The second thing that I use are young people that's been very effective, because I go into a lot of these alternative schools. I say most people die at 25, but they're not buried until they're 75, because they have bought into the false narrative of reality. Somebody has told them it's not realistic for them to get a college degree because their parents didn't have a college degree and they lived okay. They had a car and they had a house. That's a false narrative. They've bought into that, so they really have given up on all their hopes and dreams and just waiting until they're 75 years old, somebody throw the dirt on their face. This is one of the most horrendous things that I've found in life. I've been able, by God's grace, to put 82 people through officer school, 78 of those people were African American. But it was a process where I had the time to sit down with them for hours and hours and months, trying to convince them that they were smart enough to do it, and even sometimes help them write the papers. And then their esteem came up, their confidence came up, and those people are doing well today. I think a lot of times, and I'll end here, we as leaders get to a certain point in our lives, and we forget that we were those dysfunctional people with wrong mindsets. And we're so busy now, right? We don't have the time to take time and go and hold those people's hands, because you say, oh, they should do better. Well, if they know better, they'll do better. And sometimes a person like you, they look at you and me, they think we're so high and mighty and highfalutin. And I often have to tell them the only difference between me and you is a decision. I'm not smarter than you. I didn't have more chances than you. I made those opportunities by sacrificing.
Right.
That part.
I look at education as a key. And if you're okay with only 50% of the doors being opened for you, then okay. That's a decision you make. But you've got to know right off that there are going to be opportunities that you will never have. And what education does is allow you to learn how to think critically, so that you start to realize why you want all 100% of those doors to be open for you, that you can go wherever you want, and you can decide, okay, well, I don't want this. But if you don't have the education, the decision is not yours to make. You're automatically going to be funneled through certain doorways, and you're not going to get past those.
I'll add to that, when the question asks about convincing young people that education is important or relative to that, I think it's education is directly proportional to opportunity. And what I mean by that is, if a young person isn't convinced that they have opportunities, then for them there might not be a reason to go get an education. And vice versa, that you tell them, hey, go get this education, they're going to be like, for what? Why do I need to go to college? I don't even know what I would do, and I don't know what I would do with that education other than get some debt. So I think that's what our youth leaders need to get better at, because you can't use the same argument like Colonel Shahbaz said about just work real hard and put your head down and grind it out and you'll be okay. Our world is too advanced for that now. Everything is driven by technology nowadays, and so
Yes.
you have our career counselors, our PE teachers, our community service folks. All those different people have to change their message and tie opportunities to the reasons why the education is important. It's
Yeah.
no different than our kids nowadays when we say go clean up your room is why. It's the same thing. Go get an education.
All right.
Why? I don't care if you want to be a plumber or you want to go build the next space rocket. You still got to go to a trade school, vocational school. You got to do something.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's
but
right.
if you don't have a desire, if no one's convinced you that being an electrician, being a plumber, building houses, laying pipes for houses, that kind of stuff, if no one is exposed you to that being an actual opportunity, then why go get an education? So I think the message has to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
good.
good.
All right.
That's really
Appreciate that.
important.
And real quick, before we move on, we had one more question that was just posed. Producer Liz, if you want to get that up for us. Sorry, I'm probably butchering this name here on YouTube. Casada Escabero says, how do you manage your emotions in a professional setting when recently we saw that even in uniform, we are discriminated against by police? How do you do that? We didn't really want to get into that so much, but how do you guys are taught that in the military, how to manage your emotions. How do you manage your emotions in situations in the military? How do you manage your emotions when you're out on the street dealing with the citizens and law enforcement?
Colonel Henderson, the IG, take that one first.
I was just
So,
about to say that.
right,
Black
right.
women
So,
always saving the world. Come on, Colonel. You got this.
so some of it is just, you take a deep breath, and you choose your words carefully. And you realize, in any setting, you're the professional. I'm at work. The person that I'm dealing with is not at work. So I can't expect them to behave, to behave in a certain manner. There's no rule book for how you present yourself, in your off-duty time. But I'm not off-duty, right?
Right.
But as far as within the military, it's about, finding your voice, speaking your truth, but choosing your words. Picking your battles, because there's a whole lot of whole lot of battles, right? And you can't
Mm-hmm.
fight them
Yes.
all because sometimes you just become you become noise, and then nobody hears anything that you say.
Right.
So picking, choosing the right time, the right place, to bring it up. There's sometimes, I'll just jot down a little note, and I may not say anything about it for, a week, a month, until the time is right, to bring
Yeah.
it to bring it up. Or maybe you don't bring it up at all. You just, you look and you're watching out for similar situations. And you make sure that you lay the groundwork to ensure that, hey, that doesn't happen again. You look for those barriers, and you look for opportunities to say your piece.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if I
Absolutely.
could jump in on that one, just as Colonel Anderson was talking about, not fighting every battle, and it goes back to an earlier notion we made about playing chess. You need to understand uh, the profession that you're in, and whether you're a junior individual or a senior individual, everybody's training to be a leader. And although you can't separate yourself from the world completely around you, you have to take into context what are the ramifications. Uh, there was a 60-minute piece that was just released not that long ago and happened to speak on, a couple of service members happened to speak on having to change the way that they communicate and how they even walk into a room. And
Yes.
that's always being perceived as being the angry black man or the angry black woman. And I've actually heard these terms before. And it's one of those things, I even go back to this is something I just saw, and an individual was asking, like, what is it like to be a black man in America? And he said it was tiring because I'm always playing
Yeah.
defense. And for those that play sports,
Yes.
no one likes to really play defense because you exert a whole lot of energy to keep someone comfortable, or I mean, you defend someone. A lot of people just like to go play offense. And they were saying that's what it felt like for those that were not minorities could just play offense. They could just go and do whatever they want to do and not worry about offending someone or being perceived a certain way. So what I just said, and they spoke on it in that 60-minute piece, you walk into a room and a black male that has a deep voice and stands tall or something like that, it can be intimidating. I come in, I'm 6'7", I walk through doors, and individuals, first it's the height issue and all those other things, and then you look at your credentials that you bring to the table, but you can't be passionate about something because then
Yeah.
I've put it and I've perceived it as like, okay, she's just angry. Okay, wait a minute, that's not the same thing that you just said a minute ago. And I've been a senior officer where I've had a senior individual that totally discounted something that my colonel, she said, 10 minutes ago, I just happened to say it. And it just wound up being one of those things that you understand who you're talking to. And so it's a burden, but you have to outthink the situation.
Yeah, Colonel Henderson talked about history, right? And so when you understand the history of implicit bias, you understand the history of how you're perceived, you understand those perceptions in the context of who you are, and you may be the only person or the only woman, the only black person in that situation. You have to move defensively, like the doctor said. I'm 6'5", 265 pounds, and a very animated person, as you can tell. And so, people were saying, you're too aggressive, you're too loud, and you're too this, right? And so, what I had to do is, I got to go back and analyze and find out how I can move this personality, this big body, to ensure that I can get to a place to help people that are coming behind me. I think sometimes the reason our emotions aren't in check is because we're only thinking about ourselves, right? I always think in the context of the larger community. And if I've gotten this far, how can I maintain or sustain where I am so I can help people in this space? We did a Black History program probably about 2 months ago, and I was the keynote speaker. I just got to this unit, and I tell you, if you ever seen Tiger Woods after he's going to the 18th hole, where all the black people, where all the big crowd is following him, after the Black History program, like everybody in U.S. Arson was following me to my office, right? Because they seriously,
Uh-huh.
you got finally get a black chaplain, and then you got somebody there that they could talk to. So what am I saying there? I'm saying now I got to be very conscious of what I say, how I say it, so I can stay in the position because I'm going to help hundreds of people just by being here. Even if we just talking about sports or whatever, they have somebody to come to that they can confide in, and I can help them. So I'm always very conscious, even when I'm angry. I'm very conscious. I love what Colonel Henderson said, where I might say something, I may not. I may wait 2-3 months. I may wait when I'm leaving the unit and say, "Hey, brother, you said this, and I just want to tell you, if you're saying this to an African American, that you probably shouldn't say that in your next duty station because it could turn out bad for you, right?"
Yeah.
And that's just the facts. And you have to be a strong person to do that because it's not like you don't go home at night and you're doubting yourself. I should have told that mother, father off. I mean, you know what I'm saying? You going home. You going home doubting yourself if you black enough because they said some stuff that was wrong. But
Yeah.
and I'll say this in closing, you know, I'm always thinking about preserving the spot that I have to protect those who are coming to me so I can help them.
Wow. Wow.
Yep.
Love that, man. Love
And
that.
and just
Go ahead, Commander.
I'll quickly say that for me, it's like the opposite. I'm 5'10", 175. So ain't nobody intimidated by me. But what
Show,
that
show, show,
does
those, show those guns,
is
Commander. Show those guns, Commander. I know you got them.
but yeah, I do my workouts here and there.
There you
But
go.
it's the almost like the opposite, where people think that because you're not intimidating, that you're the guy that they can come to and say, "Hey, man, you don't really think like that too, do you?" Or they
Oh wow.
feel comfortable. They feel comfortable saying something that they probably wouldn't say around somebody that they're intimidated by. So then
Oh
I
wow.
then have a choice, or people like me have a choice to say, okay, am I going to lead in this moment, or am I going to just continue to stay quiet and then let them then start to believe that, okay, he's not down or he's not this, he's one that we can trust. And so you got that
Oh wow.
dynamic too. And
That's
so
deep.
but it's the same thing where you still got to pick your battles, you got to play chess, you got to do all these
Yeah.
things, because if you want to continue to move forward, continue to um, be more influential, again, starting with, and I would say across the board, all of us, all four of us, our record speaks for itself, hands down. We wouldn't be here if we didn't have the record. But it's that additional burden where you got a code switch or something like that
Mm,
to maintain that position so that you
Mm.
can be influential when it's time to cash that check. You can
yep.
do it with the right level of credibility and accountability, and know that your armor can take that hit and you keep moving.
That's
Wow.
good.
Wow.
That's
Yes.
that's
Yes.
thought
Love
it
this
from. I've
Thank you
never
conversation.
all
thought
so much.
of the perspective. That's so heavy. When they come into
Oh, I'm
you,
dropping dimes
and
today, Colonel.
Yes. Yes. I love this. The key
Well,
word
and
today, key phrase, playing chess. I've been more of a Monopoly dude. I'm gonna have to pick up chess now after hearing this 45
Yes,
times
sir.
during this conversation. Love it. Love it. Playing chess.
you
I'm
Playing
know,
just
chess.
working on not taking
another,
my earrings off. I'll be the
another
trigger
thing
one
as
in the group. They'll be like, Liz, sit down, Liz.
Liz,
And I'll
Liz,
be like, no,
cool out,
okay,
cool
now
out.
lock.
We
Go
got the
ahead,
long
Jay. We can
game.
speak afterwards.
We got the long game. Yes, we just
you
had a
know,
situation the other
as
day.
from
All
a
right.
from a woman's perspective, you guys talk about, you're 6'10", you're tall and you're big, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I am none of those things, and I have been my entire career been, said, oh, I'm intimidating, I'm
mm,
aggressive, I'm
mm.
I had some person actually say I'm scary. It's like,
Oh,
okay,
Oh wow.
none of these things. So
Wow.
Wow.
when we talk about mental health, there's sometimes where you really, you've got to have a strong, sense of self confidence and self awareness just to kind of make it through the day sometimes. And there are
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
things you sit back and you try to do this, and I'm like, I'm doing nothing differently
Right.
than what my peers are doing. But I
Right.
recently went to a training where there were all senior officers there, all commanding at my level and above. And one of the blocks that they were talking was about power, and how when you reach senior levels, people they won't question you anymore, or they won't tell you, if they think that you're doing something wrong.
mm,
And I was like, really? Because I don't have that. I don't have that. That's not my experience. I have very junior people that feel very comfortable, you know, feeling as though they know my job a lot better, or questioning my credentials. So I think, when
mm.
we look at that, it's a very different experience. And usually it's not women; it's usually men. But again, it doesn't come from men, from my peers and above. Sometimes it comes from, people very junior.
Wow.
So I think that's an experience, that we don't think about all the time. But yeah, you're always being, second guessed
And
and feeling like, hey, how did you get here? Show me that you belong here. It's almost
Yes.
like, your first I want to say first couple of months or maybe even years, you feel like you're having to prove that you belong,
That's
and
true.
wow.
there's no room for missteps.
Good points.
That's
Good
true.
points. Yeah, yeah. Well, every now and then, Colonel, you got to clap back, as they say, and let them know. Let them know.
Yes.
For
That's
real,
true.
for real. All right. Well, I love
And
this
don't do it
conversation.
with
We
a
could
smile.
don't,
Right.
don't,
Oh
Oh,
no,
don't
you
let them know.
yeah,
got
no.
Yes.
Sometimes, they say it really is true. You catch more flies with honey. So sometimes, you can have a
That's
smile
true.
while you're,
Yeah, yeah.
they walk away 2 days later and be like, "Why am I bleeding?"
Right,
For
right.
real, for real. All right.
So
So,
true.
we're gonna wrap this up. Like I said, this could go on forever, but I know we all busy people here. You guys are busy people, so let's wrap this up. Uh, I'll go through one by one, real quick. If you could tell everybody, us and our audience, what's the next step for you, and just something that you can leave our audience with, some words of wisdom that you can leave our audience with. We'll start with you, Colonel Shahbaz.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to leave you with is don't leave a live of regrets. I think you should be bold. I think you should be confident. In the whole scheme of things, for you to really be happy and peaceful, you have to be who you are. And I know that's a struggle for us sometimes because we're always on the defense. Now, all of us on here, our children are probably grown, but one of the things that I wanted to be my mission in life was to not leave my children a life where they had to recover from. I'm going to say that again. I wanted to leave my children so they didn't have a life where they had to recover from. So I had to lead the way. I had to be unapologetically intelligent, unapologetically confident, and unapologetically who I was to be so I can show them the way. And so I'd like to leave you guys with that. Obstacles, although, I mean, my last statement is if your ship don't come in, swim out to meet it. I think whatever you want to do in
Mm,
life, I think you have opportunity to do that. You just have to go for it. And I believe God will assist you in that. That's all I have. Thank you guys for inviting me. I appreciate it.
absolutely,
Thank you.
love it, love it. Commander Walker.
Yes. So what's next for me is I'm actually getting ready to transfer next week to start my training pipeline for as a prospective commanding officer. I'm going to assume duties as executive officer of USS Bainbridge, DDG 96, a guided missile destroyer, early next year. And then soon thereafter, probably around 18 months, I would, if all things go well, I would flee up to be that ship's commanding officer. So that's my immediate future, next 3 years or so. And one thing I will leave for the viewers and listeners is a quick story on my joining the Navy. I have an uncle, Uncle Y.Z. Ely, blues legend from Mississippi, Natchez, Mississippi. Throw him a quick shout out. Um, I went to see him a month before I left for boot camp, and we had a great conversation because he did 4 years in the Navy. I think he served on USS Sperry, I believe, a sub tender. And after visiting with him, he left with me these words: "Never let the color of your skin be the reason you're not successful." And I've
Mm,
Teach.
carried that quote forward for the last 24 years. Um, I understand more and more every year what my service means to the country in the larger context of this country's history. That's not lost on me as I continue to mature and get older. And I can say that with great confidence that if I ever thought that my skin color came into play, I didn't let that stop me. Um, I found an alternate route. I didn't let success be defined for me. I defined success. And as I continue to move forward, I'll continue to serve the military until I no longer select for promotion or whatever the case may be. And I'll be okay with that because I know that I did everything I could. I left everything on the court, as we would say, being pulled up for the pickup game or pulled in for the game. And so that's what I leave for the viewers. No excuses.
No excuses. All right. Love that. Love that. Colonel Henderson.
All right, so again, thank you, Dale and Elizabeth, for having this space and giving us the opportunity to share some of our experiences. I do want to say, like everyone else has said, we have talked a lot about challenges and barriers, but don't focus on those. Focus on the opportunities because they are there. And if that's what you focus on, you will find that you can overcome the barriers. So I will pass on something that someone said to me when I was thinking about applying to officer training school. Somebody told me that the opportunities were really limited, and that they weren't selecting very many people with, from my background. And so I let that discourage me. And someone, a colonel asked me, she said, "Hey, do you have your package ready?" And I said, "No, I don't think I'm going to apply because they told me they're not accepting a lot of people from my background." And she asked me, she said, "Did they say they're not accepting a lot or did they say they're not accepting any?" And
Woo!
and I thought about it, and she
Wow.
said,
Mm-hmm.
"If they're only
Ugh.
taking one,
Powerful.
why can't you be that one?"
That's
And
it.
that was what, and I said, I didn't have an answer for that. And so I submitted, and here I am. So again, if they're only taking one, don't count yourself out. You can be that one.
You can be that one.
You the one.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Wow.
You the one.
So good.
You the one.
Whew.
All right. But
Indeed.
again, thank you for this.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Dr. Parker.
And as everyone else said, Dale and Elizabeth, I really appreciate you having me here and giving me this opportunity, this space. As for what I would leave everyone with, it really goes back to that comment about playing defense or offense. I am, one of those individuals that I hate the word potential. Potential after the first, maybe second time someone tells you, you need to take it as really the message that they're giving you is that you're not living up to all that you can be in that space or in that time. It's okay to say it and say, "Hey, I see gifts in that individual." It's okay for you to look at it and take that initial message as okay that those individuals see gifts and see opportunities for me, but you got to change that potential into a reality. You got to get on the offense. And I live in that space where I'm a good basketball player. I'll cover some defense. I'll lock my man down. But then as for offense, you got to stay on the attack. And what I tell individuals, and I actually posted it up on the wall as I was pursuing my doctorate. The cavalry's not coming. Because people live in a space where they're always waiting for someone else to come and deliver an answer or possibly deliver a solution. And so I lived in the world of the cavalry's not coming. Let's get busy. Let's get it. Whatever you want to go
Yeah.
after, and, don't think that there's somebody coming to the rescue. You are that rescue.
Mm-hmm.
You're going out
Absolutely.
and whatever gift you have for the world, that could help somebody else. So that's really the message that I will leave is don't get comfortable with the potential. The cavalry's not coming. And the last one, I guess, is as Doc said, you're leaving with nuggets that you normally leave with others. I talk about managing the circle. There's lots of inputs and outputs that you have around you, whether it be your business, your work, your friends, or anything else. If you're not where you need to be, you need to manage that circle. That's all I got.
That's good.
Yes.
Wow. Outstanding.
Awesome.
Outstanding. I love this. I
Man.
love this today. I appreciate each and every last one of you coming on to the show and spreading your knowledge and your wisdom and your inspirational words for us. I'm ready. Let's go get it. Let's go get it
Get
after
your
we're done
packet
here,
together,
Liz.
Dale. Let's go.
Let's go.
And can
Right.
I can I say
Had
one
to
Y'all
stay
about
final
ready to
together.
put on my cab hat. You know I got a
can I
cab
say
hat.
one
Right.
final thing?
Go ahead,
Can I say
Colonel
one
Henderson.
final thing that we didn't talk about? And that's
Yeah, go ahead.
about, making sure that we're lifting up people behind us. If we leave, and we're
Absolutely.
all going to leave, if we're leaving and we don't have somebody ready to fill this void and step in behind us, then in my mind, we failed. And we have wasted the opportunities that we have been given. So that's what I would say to everyone. Make sure you are bringing someone else up, and spaces like this, I think, is exactly what we're doing, helping to
Yes.
bring up our replacements.
Lift as we climb.
Yep.
Mm,
Woo!
love that. Love that. Yeah, this has been a great conversation. We've kept most of our viewers through the whole time here. Lots of comments here coming through. Dr. Angela Pope says, "When's the next meeting?" I don't know. Hopefully, we can get you guys on again and we can continue this conversation again.
Just let me
This
know
is this
when.
has been great. Yes, yes, love this, love this. But we will wrap this up. I thank each and every last one of you. Be safe out there. Thank you for your service. And yeah, wow, that's what's up. Wow, what'd you think about that, Lizzie?
I'm so motivated. I'm excited.
Yes,
I'm so enlightened.
yes, yes. I
It's
love
just been
this.
amazing.
Yes, yes. Let's keep this going. Hopefully, we can get them back again next year. I mean, sometime soon.
Yes.
Appreciate everyone for joining us on all the social platforms. Till next time, my name is Dale.
This has been a Maitre D Entertainment presentation.